Hello, everyone, and welcome into episode 111 of the Stomp the Bus Show. I'm your host, Mark Harris, and I am not doing this episode solo. I am with Colton
I'm
Dodson.
back.
He has rejoined us in the year of our Lord 2025. How's it
I'm
going?
back. Oh, I'm just so pleased to be here. I had to take a little hiatus, as I'm sure a lot of people did after what transpired last week. Mark, you're a stronger man than I. You powered through the turmoil, I imagine. You saw it happen firsthand. I can't imagine being in the stands for that, or I guess the stadium. They're not really stands. I
Dude, it was
can't
a crazy
imagine.
experience for me because I was also worried because my flight left Atlanta at 7, and so
PM.
7 p.m. Eastern time. So like I was also like, how am I going to get to the airport? I had to run. Like, dude, it was a
Yeah,
crazy.
you probably weren't anticipating double overtime when they
No,
went to
I was not.
halftime.
I was not. Okay, so before let's table that for a sec
Yeah,
because the ASU at Kansas basketball game just finished, and unfortunately, the Sun Devils are no longer undefeated against the Jayhawks. We knew that streak was going to end eventually, but
yeah,
man, such a just. I'm fine with them losing. I really am. Like, I didn't expect to win this game, but just how badly they played in the second half to turn this game into a blowout when you were up by 6 points at half and played so well in the first half.
yeah. No,
I
I
mean, I
think
get that Kansas
the
is
full
good, but
court.
they're
Yeah,
not like that good. I don't know. I wasn't like blown away by them.
no, I
Um,
think that full court press that they came out running at a halftime
yeah.
really threw them out of sorts, right? I think um, the second they started running that, the flow of the offense, and I mean saying flow of the offense in ASU basketball in the same sentence isn't something I'm typically used to, but the offense didn't look terrible in the
It looked
first half,
awesome. They
right?
were moving it
Yeah.
around. Yeah.
It looked like they had a bit of a flow. They were moving the ball well. Alton Mason was knocking down shots. He kind of looked like he was taking. I mean, obviously he's not Joseph Sannon, but he kind of looked like he was taking on that role a little bit as like that sharpshooter, at least in the first half. And then
Yeah.
7 minute scoring drought. I mean, just brutal stuff. You
And
know,
yeah, it sucks because like their defense was able to hang on for a little bit during that
100%. They
beginning of the
kept them in
scoring
it.
drought, and then it just collapsed.
I mean, testament to the
So,
defense. A lot of credit to the defense that
oh
they
yeah, no, the
played
defense showed
coming
up.
coming out of halftime, man. Like to be able to continue to play that hard on the defensive side when shots aren't falling, I think that was pretty encouraging. Obviously, the flip side of that is not scoring in 7, 8 minutes, whatever it ended up being, is pretty obscene. So, um, I don't know. It was just one of those things where the first half was encouraging, and then the second half reverted right back to what we've expected a Bobby Hurley ASU basketball team to be on offense. Um, the complete opposite trajectory of I'm sorry, my mind is just still on the football team. I don't want that see I like that's a season I never wanted to end. Now it's over and I'm still working through it. And I'm kind of just talking through it and working through my feelings in live time,
Well,
in real
yeah,
time. Because this is like, truthfully, this is the first time I've talked about it. I didn't leave my bed for about 3 days. Um, so anyway, that was a tangent. I know we're talking about basketball, but it's a tough pill to swallow.
yeah, for sure. Well, sticking with basketball, I think what kind of sucks about this game is like ASU is good this year. They're a good team, but
Yeah,
they're not like a Big 12 championship contender,
no,
which no one expected. But it's this game, the BYU game, and the Florida game have really kind of cemented that like this team is going to need to win the games against like Colorado, which they did over the weekend. They're going to need to take care of the teams like when they play UCF, who Kansas destroyed, the Oklahoma State, the Utahs, whoever. Like, and they'll have to pick off a few good teams too. And they play
yeah,
Baylor this weekend. This is a big test. And the bright side of this, where we are with ASU basketball right now, like they're 10-4, they're fine. Like
Yeah.
uh, you can tell they have talent. Like it's not like when you watch that first half, it's not like ASU just looked completely out of place. They look
No,
out of place.
they definitely weren't outclassed, and I think a lot of what you
Yeah,
saw too is how big of a role home court can play in
yeah,
college basketball, right? The second Kansas picked up a little bit of momentum, and they're coming off of an unranked home loss, right? They had just seen that, right? That was what they were going through too. So the fans were latching on to every little thing that happened, and coming out of halftime, that's what I noticed, right? The fans got right back into it the second Kansas erased that 6 point lead, and ASU was just out of sorts, man. Like that's kind of what it struck me as playing in a place like Allen Fieldhouse. Obviously, is not the easiest proposition you're going to give to a college basketball team,
no,
um, and especially a restless Allen Fieldhouse, given what they had just experienced in their last game. So it was kind of those like, it's always going to be a tough game, but you also had a Kansas team that hadn't lost back to back games to an unranked team since 1989, right? So you also had that
there
playing
you go.
against you a
Colton
little
bringing out
bit,
the
but
stats tonight.
yeah, I remember that from
Oh,
the broadcast. I can't, that one just stuck out in my mind because the second I saw that,
that is a big, yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, there's no chance. 6 point lead or not, they're not losing two. Um, encouraging though. All things considered, I think even with the scoring drought, that was only like an 8 point game, 9 point game for most of it, right? It didn't start to balloon up to like 13, 14. It was a 14-point spread. It didn't start to hover around the number until, you know, 8, 7 minutes left in the game. So it, it was this ugly start to the second half, but the score didn't reflect. They hung around, all things considered. So I think that's representative too of how you feel about Kansas, right? They're not a super impressive team. And I think we saw that because they weren't able to put ASU away, despite ASU not
I mean, they put
being able
us.
to
I mean, they won.
eventually, right?
They won
But
by
when a
9
team
straight.
hasn't, scored in 7 minutes and you're only up seven
Yeah,
points,
that's fair.
like that we should have been buried. Yeah, they put us away with 4 minutes left. We should have been buried way sooner than that. So
Yeah,
that's kind of how I felt about it.
I
But
guess. I I echo some of your points. I think the thing that kind of sticks in my craw is that
what is a
we're gonna
craw?
see we're gonna see this like these droughts from ASU basketball again this year. Like even if
Do you mean
they,
like scoring droughts? Is that what you're
yeah,
saying?
like maybe not like a 7 minute scoring drought to begin the second half, which is like super bad. Like, but we're gonna see these stretches from this team, and it's like it's just kind of get. And there might be like two or three, maybe one or two games this year where they have a really ugly scoring stretch in a game or scoring drought, and they're able to overcome it and steal a game somewhere or whatever. But
Right.
uh, it's just it's tough. What I was mentioning before is like they didn't have Jocelyn Sannon and they didn't have Austin Nunez tonight. So like you get two more guards in there. You get a dead eye shooter like Sannon back in the game. That's huge, and I think we would expect to have Sannon back when they played Baylor this weekend, just because he was a
Yeah.
game decision today, and I'm glad they didn't force him into this game. So it's tough, but I mean, in that first half, man, you saw you saw like Mason looking good. You saw Jihad contributing. You saw Miller
Yeah.
really. I thought Miller played pretty well this whole game. And then Quaintance, like he just makes such an impact defensively, and he's just all over the place. And so it's like overall, like you leave this game, everything's fine for the most part. Like no one got injured, unless I wasn't really paying attention at the end of the game.
No,
So
I don't think I saw anything of
nothing
note.
bad, and this you're playing at Kansas anyway. Like it's a tough spot to begin with, So like all of that like is fine, but it's just the thing that I can't escape is like just the ugliness of like the ugliness that sometimes comes with the Hurley era isn't gone,
Yeah.
even though this team has, I would say, largely avoided it this year. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
the BYU
Which
game probably had some of that, so but
yeah,
you got to believe
depending on
that
how you perceive it though, it kind of feels like it was bound to happen eventually, right?
that's true. That's true.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah. And I,
and
I think
it didn't end up
too,
killing you against a bad team so
right.
far.
And you said ugly. Like, I think it even goes beyond ugly sometimes. Like they look hapless.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
that's a good
they
way to
don't
put
have they don't have you have no faith in them. Like
it. Yeah,
tonight,
and
two
you can
minutes into that
feel it,
scoring
dude.
drought. Yeah, two
Yeah,
minutes into that scoring drought, I was like, I have no faith that any of these guys are getting a bucket here because they're
yeah,
not getting open looks. There's no rhythm to the offense when they fall into those droughts.
I
So
know, man. No, it's team like it's teams will be able to like see this too. So
yeah,
here's what I'll say: like they responded very well from a bad loss when they played Colorado this past
yep,
weekend. So hopefully we can see that again against Baylor. Baylor's like not like some Baylor's good, but they're not unbeatable. Um, it'll be interesting what the spread for that game is. Um, so, I mean, this is what it's going to be like in Big 12 basketball. Like going on the road, you're going to take some ugly losses.
for sure. I think going into the season, we said they'd be like a middle of the pack
Yeah.
Big 12 team, and I think that's kind of what we've seen from them to this point, right? You get
Yep.
the big
Yep.
win over Colorado and the big loss to Baylor or I'm sorry, BYU, big loss to Kansas. They're hovering around. I guess it remains to be seen, but to this point, that is kind of held true. That
Yeah.
middle of the pack prediction.
It's just they're going to have to pick off one of the upper end teams at some point
Yeah,
this year. Because they're probably going to lose a game they shouldn't lose. So you got to counteract that. But overall, it's just I don't know. It's just a disappointing night amid a pretty good season for ASU. And I guess the final thought for me with this loss is like the margin for error now just becomes a little bit thinner. You
yeah,
know, now you don't have the opportunity to beat Kansas on the road. That's lost. And even though your level of play throughout the game probably didn't indicate a 19-point loss, that's what ultimately went down as. And so you scored
right.
13 points in the second half. There's a lot to uh, shake up and get started with. And, you know, I guess I'm glad being in the Big 12 means these losses aren't as quite as detrimental, but you're going to have to pick
Yeah,
up these better teams at some point. So,
for sure. I like the way you put that. It's simply a loss that narrows the margin, right?
yeah.
We were a 14-point underdog, but we also need resume building wins um, to make a push at this tournament and avoid a a first four game for the first time since what 2012?
Oh my God.
Is
I don't
that the
even,
last
no, I think it
time?
was like or I think it was 14 our
Oh,
senior
you're right. When they
when they
played
got beat.
no.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. You're right. It was
Yeah.
14. I was in high school, but I couldn't remember.
Yep.
I was a senior. You're right. It was
That
Texas, right?
I know. Ironic.
There it
Uh,
is.
yeah, so and well, the other thing is I saw it, I think on Tuesday morning, Joe Lunardi came out with his early bracketology, and we were on the outside looking in, which whatever, it's the first week of January, and there's still
Right.
2 months to go, but it's still like okay, like these wins over New Mexico and Grand Canyon and St. Mary's, Santa Clara. I might be forgetting a team or two in there that we beat. Like these are good wins, but they're not like
They're
you
not
can't
they're only
just
gonna get you so far.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like if we had beaten Florida, then I think I would feel so much better. Like that win would mean a lot more, but that didn't happen. So, um, yeah, I mean, I guess it's not the worst place in the world for in terms of ASU basketball. So this is probably like where we expected to be as like we probably would have been like, maybe we beat BYU on the road, but we probably lose to Kansas. So it's not so bad. But I guess it just kind of takes me back to the Florida game a little bit, where it's like we were a good team, and then we went up against a team that's like a real like candidate for a top three seed or top three
Top
seed.
seed, yeah.
Yeah, or top. Yeah, or like I guess what I mean is
I,
like
man,
Kansas and Florida are both teams.
after what they did to Tennessee too,
Yeah, no,
like,
I mean Florida
that's
does
a
look incredible.
yeah,
They
that's
like
a
Florida
good
definitely
team.
looked a lot better than Kansas, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's just kind of what irks me about this game. I mean, how can you not be a little irked after that second half? It's just
Oh yeah. No, I'm with you, man. It's not one that you're like, oh, okay, it is what it is. You know, like
right,
it is
right.
brutal because they were in it. They had a shot.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but you know, the Bobby Hurley era rears its ugly head again on offense. You know,
right. Yeah,
it's what we're accustomed to. So
well, speaking of Bobby Hurley, did you see some of the stuff that I'm, doing the quotation marks, like reports about AS, like about ASU, like potentially not meeting its NIL requirements to some of its basketball players?
I didn't see that. Is that a real
Okay.
thing?
Um, basically
I saw the Quaintance thing, and I
okay,
saw
okay.
that his dad shot a
Yes, that's what I'm referencing.
yeah.
And so, yeah, basically a U of A bar stool on Instagram, which just
That's
low
see, okay,
level
then
behavior.
I did
Yeah.
see this. I thought that you were saying that it like went beyond just the
No, no, no,
U
no,
of
no,
A.
no.
Okay,
That was
okay.
a rumor.
I
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
nervous. I was nervous.
No,
I
no,
thought
no,
there was
no,
more.
no. Yeah, if I retweeted it on the Stomp the Bus, and basically Jaden Quainton's dad said, I don't have it in front of me, but we got
Basically, they've
everything.
met.
Yeah,
Yeah, they've met all their obligations
and have
and
gone
then
like above
some.
and beyond. Yeah, and
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Simon did the same thing. So it's not a big deal. Um, I think it would. I think this all stemmed from like a blog post on Sun Devil Source in which Cartman was saying that like the basically what happened is the rumored Netflix style docu series didn't come through, and it was with a smaller company, but
Okay.
within the time of it not coming through, Hurley was able to secure funds. Like they were able to get the funds secured anyway, and um, like at least for this year, everything's all good. Now it could significantly reduce their recruiting impact in the future, and that's something to um, be worried about, I guess. But it is just I don't know, just low level behavior from the Arizona Barstool account. Like,
Well, I mean, dude, it's the Arizona
no,
Barstool
no,
account.
I get that. I get that. That's a good retort, but it's one thing to like,
You're right. They do have an audience.
well, because they're going out of their way. They're stirring the pot. It
Yeah.
would be like if, let's just say we had a little bit larger of a following, if we had like 1 point, like 1,500 followers on Twitter or something, and then we just would always like do like rumors about like, oh, did you hear something about I don't know, Noah Fafita is going to transfer in the spring portal or something, like just kind of talking out of our ass. And I understand that they got it from like did it by misinterpreting a um, blog post on Sun Devil Source, which is also like that's only for subscribers. Like even we shouldn't be knowing about this, but it's all come out and like they literally screenshotted stuff from the Sun Devil Source like private page, which is just super shady. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, like it's probably
Hey,
just
man,
like there's some dumb college kid who like doesn't fully understand like the
little
implications.
brother, little brother's gonna do little brother things. They're down bad. Let them be down. It's hilarious. We
Yeah,
had it's beautiful because we genuinely had the football season that they thought they were going to have this year.
dude. Oh,
And that
dude,
is
I've seen some of their fans on social media. Like I saw some guy, he was like he was quote tweeting Terry McCauley, who again has zero connection to ASU. He's just a
and
you
has
know,
eviscerated the refs from that
yeah,
game, by the way.
yes. And yes, so this is our transition into that game. Uh
Yeah.
it obviously the main call was the non-targeting call and at the end of the game, which was obviously targeting. And like, I don't even really want to get into like the debate around it. Like, it was obviously targeting. Everyone who's
Have
not
you
upset.
seen? I think it came out in the last couple of days that lip reading. I think John Boy Media put it out.
I saw that. I know that
Have
John
you seen
Boy.
that?
No, I didn't watch it. I know that John Boy um,
It makes it so
did
much
a
worse. I will
did a
say that.
recap of the. Yeah, I know they did a recap of the final or like the fourth quarter, but
They
I don't
did
know
a
what.
lip reading
Yeah,
of sort of the deliberation between Dillingham and the officiating crew while they were reviewing the call.
it's just yeah,
And yeah, no, it's absurd. Dillingham was like, "I have one more question. Was my guy defenseless?" And they evidently said that he wasn't defenseless, and that's why they picked up the. Obviously, like you can't really see what they're saying, but that
yeah.
was where you see it on the broadcast where Dillingham kind of like brings his head back and like starts to shake his head a little bit. It was in response to him asking the officials if um Stovall was defenseless.
Right, which he
So
obviously was. It was
he
so
obviously was.
it was so obvious.
And
And then, yeah, the other thing that Macaulay was pointing out that I guess we started our conversation with was on the punt return by Bolden, there was a clear missed block
yeah,
in the back. That one, I'm not like I
it
can,
doesn't bother me as much. Like
yeah, because that's more run
it
of the
was
mill.
funny. It was funny because when we were watching that game, um, Seth came over and watched it. I had like a couple people over to watch
Right.
it. Obviously, Seth's late, so that's the
Oh,
first play
well,
that that's the first like one of the first two plays that he sees is that punt return for a touchdown. And he's screaming at the TV that it's blocking the back. And I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I think Seth's on edge. And then they run it back or not blocking the back blindside or whatever the call should have been, which it did look like a blindside block. But in retrospect, given how everything else went down, I think that call was like the least I don't know. The least incendiary, I guess, is the best way to put it
yeah,
for
well, and
me
it's
out of
just
all of them, which shows you how bad the rest of the calls were.
it's more of a run of the mill play, but it had such a huge
Right.
impact on the game. And just
Right.
being in the stadium at that moment when I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!" Like I spent this money to go to Atlanta. Like, it's probably not even the most like financially intelligent trip that I've done anyway. But whatever. I'm glad I went. Honestly, like it was super fun.
You saw one of the best college football games
Yeah,
maybe ever.
no, for sure. But I was not feeling that way when it was 14-3 after Bolden housed it, and we had just got torched on defense. So yeah, that penalty, just the non-call was bad, and then, I mean, really, the non-call targeting, like all of the other penalty stuff that comes out of this game, like it doesn't even it doesn't it's just so immaterial to that call, you know.
Right. Like nothing the fourth and third everybody wants to point to the fourth and 13 and
Well,
all of that. Given
yeah,
this the flow of that game and given where momentum was at that point in time, because whether you want to believe in momentum in football or not, that was case in point,
yeah, no, for
an
sure.
example of momentum being real in football. If that targeting call is called, ASU has a first down with a minute left to play on what, the 32? The Texas
Um,
32, 33, something like that. I'm
yeah.
pretty sure the play happened on the 48,
Let's look.
right?
Let's look exactly here. Keep going, and let's look exactly
So anyway,
where it
you
was.
get that targeting call on with a minute left, right in the 30-yard range, somewhere in there, right?
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
let's not even talk about field goal range. Okay. We had seen kind of what field goals looked like earlier in that game. But let's look at what ASU's offense was putting together at that point, right?
right.
I don't think there is any scenario where they don't at least give, I don't even remember who was kicking at that point in the game, at least give a kicker a shot at a field goal with a field goal from less than 40 yards out with 3 more downs and a minute on the clock. That I don't care about 4th and 13. 4th and 13 does not happen if the refs call like targeting is no longer a penalty. It can't be. Because how do you look at that and say that that was not targeting? That was not a defenseless receiver. That receiver did not lower the crown, or the DB did not lower the crown of the helmet. Like, and the worst part is those officials will never have to answer for that call.
No, but
They will
no,
never have to explain why that receiver was not defenseless. And it's absurd to me. It's absurd.
yeah, I know. No, it's ASU would have gotten the ball at its own at the Texas 37 with like a minute left. So nothing was
Exactly.
like that's not field goal range, but like they would have had to get. I don't know that it would have been great to see that. It would have been great to can they get
And that's
like
how it should have ended.
yeah
People are
no I
like,
know
you don't call targeting at that point in the game. Targeting was implemented to protect
I
the
know
players, right?
well and
Just
it's
because
just
there's a minute left on the clock, it doesn't lower the danger of a hit like
yeah.
that.
Thankfully, that does seem to have been more of a minority opinion in it.
It's a ridiculous opinion.
It's stupid, and it's because of how obvious it was. It's not like there was some gray area. Like
It was not
everyone
even up to interpretation. You're right.
exactly.
It was
So
not even up.
that's what's frustrating. And maybe they would have missed a field goal at the end, anyway. But yeah, and on that drive, like Levitt missed a pass earlier that drive. He might have missed two passes like on that drive, like before it was 3rd and 15. But like all of that is
Exactly.
irrelevant when a call doesn't get made. So like
Dude,
it's
you're
not that
100%
call.
right.
It's not that call alone why they lost, but it's a huge thing you can point to. And again, it's not just ASU fans that think that. Like that's kind of that's the most legitimizing factor in it to me. It's like if it was just like there have been times when it's been ASU fans like, oh, the refs of this that, but that it doesn't rise to an additional level. And maybe it's because so many people were watching that game, but it was just an obvious call that everyone saw, and it was like, yep, that's targeting. That's like I
Like
think
I
Scott Van
went to
Pelt
the
said it
bat
best.
like
Like
dude, I went to the bathroom. I went to the
oh
bathroom and I was
wow,
like, okay, nice. Yeah, we're gonna have 1st and 10. I came out and it was 4th down, and I'm like, what?
that's
What
crazy.
happened? Like I,
That
I
oh
think I think the biggest thing for me, right, is the argument that I've seen. Also, everybody wanting to point out the interception, and that should have been
dude,
targeting or
that is not
whatever.
even
Not
anywhere.
even
It's not
not
equivalent.
even in the same realm. Not even in the same realm.
Not even no.
Furthermore, if that was called targeting, it occurs after the interception. So
Yeah,
ASU still gets possession. Even if you call targeting on that play and it's 15 yards back, it's still a Texas turnover. It happens after the ball is caught. Wasn't targeting to begin with, but that's what happens in that scenario. Additionally, you look at what ASU did on that drive, there's a reason it was 3rd and 15. So to say that calling targeting there would take the game out of the hands of the players and would decide the
right.
game, you that not calling that targeting took the game out of the hands of the players. You had a prime opportunity to watch ASU's offense, an offense that was humming, an offense that just erased whatever an 18-point deficit or a 16-point deficit, right? You had an
Yep.
opportunity to watch that offense go against a Texas defense that was one of the best in the country. But by making the right call, and you
Yeah.
decide if that's your argument, if your argument is it takes the game out of the hands of the players,
No, that's a
they
whole.
that call took the game out of the hands of the players. That's what happened. Those refs should absolutely have to answer for why they did not make that call, and they never did because there's no transparency in officiating. And I think that is the worst part of any sport is
Yeah.
officials never have to answer for the calls that they make. At least explain it. You don't have to there doesn't have to be some referendum, but at the end, explain what you saw because the entire country, who I might add became ASU fans in that moment,
Yep.
which was crazy. Everybody was an ASU fan. I've never seen anything like it. But the rest of the world, or I guess the United States, The rest of the country saw somebody's head hit somebody else's head, an open and closed example of targeting, and it was not called. So what did you see? That's all I want to know, and we'll never know, and that's what sucks.
Yeah. And the thing that, Rossini and Dillingham and Brett Yormark of the Big 12 have kind of talked about after the game is like, okay, well, what is targeting? Like, let's have a uniform across all
Yeah,
conferences instead of having it like, and it's another issue with college football. Like, it's, Big Ten refs doing a Peach Bowl between SEC, Texas. It's not, there's not a uniform thing for it. And so
100%.
this is
That's
where,
another great point.
it gets like, it just gets ugly sometimes. And like I'll give us credit. Like we haven't talked about it. Like, oh, it's like the refs being out for like it's rigged. It's like no,
No,
this is just them being bad, and it's them like just there's not being clear consensus.
you're 100% right. I don't think
Because if
I
it
am
was
not going
rigged,
to blow
they didn't throw the flag initially. They buzzed it
right,
in
and
after. So
I think I am not that there is no conspiracy at any point from me. I don't think that
right.
that's the lamest. That's as lame as saying
Well,
you can't call it in that scenario. Like there's
yeah,
no. But my thing is this. This is what I will say, and this is what I will continue to say. What what possesses you to look at the clearest? I don't know if I've ever seen. I'm sure I have, but in that moment, I don't know if I've ever seen, or it's at least right there with some of the clearest examples of targeting I have seen in college football.
right.
Like it's up there. It's one of the clearest examples I have personally witnessed. So when you're looking at one of the clearest examples of an infraction of a rule, what is telling you that that is not an example of the implementation of the rule? The crown of the helmet lowers. The receiver is defenseless. The head is Stovall's head is barely turning around by the time
Yeah.
the safety's helmet is in his chin. So like what do you see on that play for that to not be targeting? Because targeting isn't a penalty if you're not going to call that. Like, and that's another. You brought up another great example. There is no centralized officiating
Yeah.
approach in college football. You said it. You've got a Big Ten officiating crew taking a Big 12 versus SEC game, right? Like your mind starts to wander. You're like, why was that not called?
I know.
And that's
It's
the downside to them not getting to defend themselves either. That's a double-edged sword.
yeah. Well,
So
I think we've made our thoughts clear on the non-targeting play.
that was so cathartic. I want you to know that. I
Yeah,
haven't been able to let that all out. It has literally sat inside of me for a week,
there
man.
you go.
It
That's what
feels so
that is
good.
the origin of what this show is built upon. Just being able to vent our ASU sports related thoughts. So, um,
Ah,
yeah, no,
horrible.
and with all that said, like what a crazy game. I mean, Scattaboo.
I
There's
just
not
can't even believe they were in it. Like
no, and
that
that's how I
game.
felt, dude. Or that first half, man. Like, I was like, man, we are getting just absolutely little brother, like or big whatever
Yeah,
it is, like just
there
getting
was
destroyed. It was so ugly. We did not look like we should even be on the field with them. And
right.
then that third quarter, they just kind of just hung around a little bit. You mess up some not great play calling, right in the red zone there, but then you get a safety that helps you get back in it. You get a field goal at least, and it's like, it's 17-8. You're like, okay, like they're not blowing us out, you know?
Two-score game. At
Yeah.
that point, I was like, just cover. I had ASU 12 and a half, I think it was. I had
Yeah, and then
ASU
Texas
cover 12 and a half,
scores. But man, that it was 4th and 2
which,
from what?
yeah, I was going to say that I remember watching that Quinn Ewers rushing touchdown
Yeah,
too.
that was
And it's
tough.
like that there was kind of some suspect some suspect offensive line play on that too. And it's like, I
Yeah,
mean, you're gonna
I can
miss
look at
that.
that a bit more, but
It's not the end of the world given everything that happened. a game like that coming down to that no call, I think it still would have been in my mind like when let's say they go down, they get the targeting call, they miss the field goal, and then Texas wins in overtime. Like you're not depriving that game of instant classic status by calling that penalty. That
No,
comeback was
no.
still one of the most incredible things I think truthfully we'll ever see as ASU fans, win or lose.
Yeah.
Like coming back from that deficit against that team and seeing what, dude,
Getting both 2-point
Scatabo
conversions.
getting both 2-point conversions, Scatabo basically catching a touchdown almost, right? He got them within
Right.
the 10 on that reception, throwing a touchdown, rushing for a touchdown. It was just like
It
this
was
dude would
insane,
not
dude.
be denied. He would not be denied.
Breaking
And
tackles.
oh man, it was like the whole puke and rally thing. It was just
That
one of the greatest things.
I found that out after the game because like I didn't get
Yeah. Oh yeah, you wouldn't have been able to see it from the stadium.
no.
But like, man, I don't remember I don't remember being on an emotional roller coaster worse than that one. On 4th and 13, I had my pockets empty. I was ready to run and jump with like a bunch of people. There was, you know how my pool's set up, right? Like where
Oh, you're
that
right.
like
You're at the
TV,
pool.
yeah, where
Uh,
that TV is set up. Dude, we started with maybe like 6 or 7 people watching the game. By
yeah.
the end, there was like 18 people just like passing by that had just stopped and were like I was hugging strangers. It was incredible, dude. And I'm sitting there with like a crowd ready to run and jump in this pool on 4th and 13 and just catches that touchdown. And it's like I think that's the closest I've come. I don't even think the Eagles Super Bowl loss was as gutting because it happened so gradually. It sucked at the end, but this was like that 4th and 13 ripped my heart out and showed it to me. Because at that point I was like, I that might have been it. That's how it felt.
Yeah. For me, so it didn't feel as quite as gutting as like some of the other losses I've experienced as a sports fan. I'd put it on like the second tier of that. For whatever reason, going into that fourth down, I didn't feel like at any point I was like, oh, we got this in the bag. I was like, we just got like, it was more of like, we got to get this stop, but they are fully capable of getting it as well. You know,
Yeah.
I just with just seeing that Texas team, and I guess I mean Golden had been good all game for them, man. Like he had been really good on their. You have to remember they had 2 drives to get into makeable field goal range, and they missed them both in the last
Yeah,
another
dude.
just crazy part of this game.
Yeah.
Um, the doink at the end of regular, I was like, what in the world is going on?
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I that was like I can't believe
that
that
might have been
Dak.
that might have been like the happiest moment of the game if you're an ASU fan, even in overtime. Or I mean, that's that Sam Levitt run on 3rd and 14 and over. Like that was just absolutely legendary.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the 4th and 13, it's brutal. Like it's brutal, but I don't. For whatever reason, I just never like let myself really think like we've got this game won. Um, I don't mind blitzing. I went into this game thinking like make Quinn Ewers beat you, and blitzing him there is making him beat you, and he hit a perfect throw.
Yeah.
Perfect throw. Golden ran a great route. The only thing that I didn't like they dropped Smith and Dorba on that play, and it's like and because they brought pressure up the middle, which I again I understand that, but you can't be dropping those 2 guys. So
Yeah. I don't
it's
like
tough.
because if
It's
I
tough.
remember correctly, did they run a zero blitz there?
Yeah,
Where it
zero
was like,
points. Or well, yeah. I mean, I think they
because
brought Browser, but you know, Simmons is the one who messed up on the coverage, and then Alford, as Dillingham explained, like was taught to go catch the intermediate routes, which I like Dillingham's explanation on Twitter because it's not that it like makes you feel better, but at least it's like, okay, I understand what like
the thought
what
process.
what the thought process was, what the goal of the play was. I think that's a better approach to fans than just being like covert about it, and then that just allows all sorts of like crazy things to pop up out of that. So um,
Yeah.
it's tough. It's a tough play, and then I mean, on the second overtime, like that was a great throw, great play design. Like that's the issue when you play like, Sark had some great plays dialed up when they absolutely needed them, and
Yeah,
it
no,
sucks.
you're right.
It does suck. I will say, like, seeing Ohio State just completely eviscerate Oregon, like
Yeah,
there is a part of me, like, obviously I would rather win this game. Like it would be so much better talking here right now. Like we're the Peach Bowl champs, but avoiding a humiliating loss to Ohio State to end the year, like, is not the worst thing. I now and I would feel differently if we were on the other side of the bracket. I want to be very clear. Like, this is specifically about Ohio State.
right.
Um, like I think we shown we could beat Texas. Like
Yeah.
if we played Notre Dame or Penn State, we would be underdogs. I think Notre Dame's offense is limited, so we'd have a chance in that game. And I think Penn State is very similar to Texas, and that they have talent, but sometimes they leave you wanting a bit more. So I think
Hmm.
both of those teams we could have beat. I think Oregon. I think we would have been big underdogs against Oregon, but every time they've played a good offense this year, they've given up 30 points. You
Yeah.
know, Penn State, Ohio State twice, and then Boise State. So I'd see those like Oregon would be tough. But my ultimate point is like this team showed out, man. They showed out. Sam Levitt, dude, he kept them alive in that first half, man. Some of the
Yeah.
sacks he was avoiding, he had like a juke. I don't know how he did it. It was insane, and like in the second half, he was great too. And that is like coming out of this game. I'm like, man, at least we got Sam Levitt coming back. Like,
But that's the thing, and I think you brought up a great point. I when you said it, I was kind of like, I don't know. But then I thought about it a little more when you mentioned like the way the season ended. Because let's be honest, and I think a lot of ASU fans would be honest here. There was a ceiling. I don't think this team was going to win a national championship,
no,
right?
yeah, the ceiling was winning a playoff game.
Right. That was the ceiling,
Yeah,
right? And we fell a rung below the ceiling. But the way that that happened, I think galvanized something,
yeah.
right? I
I hope.
think the way that the season clearly, I mean, look at all the starters coming back for next
Yeah,
year,
dude.
right?
No,
Like,
yeah, we gotta
well,
talk.
I'm sure we're gonna mention that in a second, but you bring up a great point because it's like let's be real. They're not going to go in to a game against Ohio State and win that game. I think Ohio State probably wins the national championship.
Yeah,
I think they're the most talented team
they look
left.
insane. Yeah,
So I think winning the Peach Bowl would have been incredible. But I think in the minds of so many fans, there were so many wins to take from that game. Just the
yes,
experience
yes.
of seeing that, just the experience of watching what they went out and did. To
Oh yeah,
feel like to feel like a game against Texas was stolen from you
yes.
it's a galvanizing feeling. And not only is it galvanizing the fan base, because this fan base became more united than I've ever seen it, right? I think it's also galvanized this roster. I think it's united this roster. And I think that that underdog role that they embraced this year, they're going to continue to embrace that. But I think it's going to evolve ever so slightly to like they're going to be out for vengeance, man. They're going to be pissed. It's not just going to be like, oh, us against the world, all of that. It's going to be like,
Right.
let's go get what was ours, you know? And I
Yeah,
think
that's a good way to put it.
there's something to be said for that. And I think what we've seen in terms of the response, not only from fans who I think are rightfully upset, and I think that targeting call is going to live in ASU lore just like the fourth and 13 probably will,
Yeah.
but fans have also done a great job of turning that page. I think it's been a
No,
week,
I think yeah, I do agree with that. Like the general vibe of ASU fans is just pride, right? Like
right?
everyone is proud of how they
What they
played.
did was incredible.
Yeah.
There is nothing about this season where it's like, oh, if they would have showed up here, there was never a point where we were like ASU football didn't show up.
No, no, even
At
in the
least that's how
Cincinnati
I
game,
feel.
even
Even
in
in
the
the Cincinnati game,
Cincinnati
down
game, the
your
Texas
starting
Tech game.
quarterback.
Yep. The Texas Tech game, we were like, man, like ASU really kept itself from getting blown out and made it
They
a quasi
battled
competitive
all
game.
year,
You know, yep,
battled all
yep,
year. And that
yep.
is not something we've been used to seeing.
No,
We've seen teams that can't get out of their own way, teams that look like they're quitting, teams that lose to Eastern Michigan, which
even
that
dude,
Eastern Michigan kid
even
team,
with good, even with like the Todd Graham teams, like
right?
that were
It
good. Like,
it always it always
yeah,
seemed to happen. This team not only like defied every expectation that we had for it. I think this team beat history a little bit.
a
I
little
think
bit.
this team
Yeah,
beat I think this team beat a lot. ASU was viewed as a cursed team by these fans, right? Like we were kind of viewed as a snake bitten team. That's
yeah.
how I viewed ASU.
Dude, I
Nothing
mean
good was ever
that
going to
UCF
happen.
game that we won, like that's a
Hmm.
that's kind of a game like everyone's going to remember the BYU game and the Big 12 championship game, the Peach Bowl, Territorial Cup, beating Utah, even like beating Mississippi State too, and even the Wyoming game was like, oh, this team is much better than we thought. But like the
Right.
UCF game goes like is like, oh, that's just kind of a ho hum win at home. It's like no, that you got outplayed in that game. Like if you remember that game, like Harvey was gashing us.
Oh yeah.
I felt like they
Like,
got
you're
every
talking
big
the UCF
yeah,
game, right?
yes. I
Yeah,
felt,
man.
felt like they
Like,
got every big third down through the air, but ASU just made just enough plays, got the pick by our old friend LaTerrence Welsh, who's now at
yeah.
UNLV. No temptations, nothing to steal in
Hide
Vegas.
hide
Uh,
your watches.
yeah. In all seriousness, I hope he does well there, and I think he can. But the point being about the UCF was the quintessential like this is a dumb game that even a good ASU team would lose, and they
Yep.
didn't. And now that's the difference in them, going to the Alamo Bowl or going to the Peach Bowl. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, like having all these guys return. You have 4 of your 5 offensive line starters. That's incredible.
And the reason you don't have 5 out of 5 is because you just sent a guy to the NFL.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Leafs going to be Leafs going to the NFL. Scat's
right.
going to the NFL. Shamari Simmons declared for the draft and is going to the East West game. So that's good. I wonder Caleb McCullough will be leaving as well. I wonder what his future hold. Like I could see him being like a late round linebacker drafted, maybe undrafted free agent guy. I don't know. Um, and then you lose Jeff Clark, who that's a big loss, but I do think they'll be able to. They have a good group coming back on the D line, and then you lose a big chunk of your receiver core in Guillory, Stovall, Jake Smith, and then Troy O'Meary is transferring, which I didn't know he had another year of
Yeah.
eligibility left. But that's
Bringing
about
back Tyson
yeah,
is
exactly.
big.
You bring back Tyson, which is just enormous, enormous, enormous. Um, but like
Mateer.
like those wide receivers, like they did good things for ASU this year, and it would be nice to have like Guillory. I thought improved this year, but they will not be like extremely difficult to replace. And
And they've done well in the portal too. Some of the guys they're picking up in the portal at
right,
receiver,
well,
I
they only
think
got
are
one.
getting
They got Moss and they got the guy from Clemson too, Noble Johnson. So
right.
yeah, so if one of those guys hits, Moss has already produced at Fresno State, so he should be a solid player. And then you get the kicker Gomez from Eastern Michigan.
Which is so massive, man. Like,
And that forces you like now next year, all these fourth down decisions from like the edge of field goal range don't become as much of a decision, because they
right,
went for it on a
right.
4th and 10 in this game at like their own or like the Texas 38, and I was like, yeah, I'm fine with them doing it even if they don't get it because like we're not going to make a field goal from here. So
Exactly. And with his Gomez, right? Is his name?
Jesus Gomez.
Yeah. With Jesus Gomez, like it completely alters your offensive approach at times
Oh,
because
I
you
know.
don't have to try to, you know, yeah, exactly. Like, man, I don't know. I think
And dude, like all
I
the
think
defense is coming back. Like every
yeah.
like it's ridiculous. It's like
Who knows what we'll get out of Rayleigh Brown too, as
yeah,
far as an offensive weapon. We were
Kyson
excited about
Brown.
him.
Kyson Brown
Tyson
improved so
Brown,
much this year. Um,
yeah.
Yeah. So like I'm not
And
worried about
the Army transfer,
yeah.
his name's escaping me,
Kanye
but
Udo.
there you go.
Yep.
Yeah,
1,100 yards.
um yeah, I feel like they have to be one of the favorites in the Big
I
12.
they should be the favorite in the Big 12. There would it would kind of be like one of the big themes is like, okay, now you are the hunted. You are not the hunter anymore. Like you are the
Right.
big dog. You have the target on your back. It would be great if like the Big 12 media. Oh, let's vote. Actually, Kansas State. Like they have guys coming back. It's Kansas State. They're a good program. They vote them number one or vote BYU number one, something like that. But it will probably be ASU. And now the question becomes like, how do you handle success? And I don't know,
Yeah.
man. I feel like this team with Levitt leading it, like I don't think he's going to be like swayed. I feel like he's just going to approach everything the same way. And
Right.
he
And
wants to prove
I
everyone
think
right.
yeah, and I think there's a subjective nature to that, right? Like success.
Right.
I think what we've just talked about in terms of like what happened in that Peach Bowl might completely alter that perspective. I don't think that I don't think Dillingham will let any of these guys get complacent.
No.
But I know like that game has to be living in the back of their heads, right?
Yeah.
Like that game it can't haunt you, but it can drive you. And I think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see not so much like how do you handle being at the top, but more like let's get back and do what we should have done last year and win a playoff game, you know?
Yep. That's the
So,
motivation. Yes, and that's
yeah,
great to have. Um, I mean, this team and like they'll have some talent coming back next year. Like Tyson is going to the NFL. Like he is
yeah,
like this is his last year in college. It could be Levitt's last year in college. Like I could see him really rising up the draft boards, man. Like he has everything you need from a quarterback. And he's got all the intangible stuff. Um, you could have a few guys on the offensive line get drafted, right? Like Ben Coleman, Ian Otshore has been brought up as an NFL guy at right tackle. He's had a great year. You bring back Mateer. Um, and then on defense, maybe I don't know if the defensive line, like maybe some guy will get picked in the late round, but they show like when you limit Texas's rushing like that was the craziest part of the game. Like they just
yeah,
stuffed in the run game. Uh, Maybe not everyone on that defense is like a world beater, but it's just a lot of really good players. Keyshawn Elliott coming back is so big. And then the secondary, like everyone comes back other than Simmons, and then Cole Martin, who is going to UCLA to play under his dad. So it's like,
yeah.
um, I don't know.
Yeah,
Like it is kind of scary, like bringing most guys back. It's like, oh, like what's going to happen, Like, but it's a great
wait,
spot.
what's scary? What's scary?
Just from an ASU fan perspective, like having like high hopes and like
Yeah, no, you're right. Okay,
yeah,
you mean
like
like the expectation.
everything on paper seems very good.
No,
There's
okay.
no
Now I get what you're saying because I agree with that. Like there is an element of that, and we're conditioned to feel that way because of all the bullshit we've had to deal with as fans of this team. But I also think that like we saw so many reasons to think that this should be different.
I
Like
agree.
this doesn't feel like the peak.
No.
And I mean, to be honest, I kind of felt a little bit of this when Jaden Daniels was going into his sophomore year, and we've hammered that home plenty. You know, we've talked about that, but this feels like the continuity. I think across the board is almost unheard of in college,
It's it's
right?
it's ridiculous.
Like
And it
from the
shows
head coach
yeah,
to the coordinators to the
yep,
roster, like
yep,
that shows you what they have built is not only like it'll be remembered forever among ASU fans, but
right.
that it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's sustainable, which I think is the best part.
Yeah. I mean, it's at least sustainable for the next season. We don't know. But I can't think about 2 seasons from now. I can
Yeah,
only worry about
let's
the 2025 season. Think
we're a
about
week removed. We're
yeah,
a week removed from one of the greatest heists in the history of college football. So
I know, dude. No,
We can't
it
get too
was
far
such
ahead
a
of ourselves.
it has been just such a fun season. Like,
I don't want it
just
to end, dude.
yeah,
That run from Kansas State until the Peach Bowl, that run of games
dude, they were
from
so hot.
Kansas State to BYU to the Territorial Cup to the Big 12, like watching those games as a fan back to back to back, like each game got bigger and
Yep,
getting to watch that was even the U of A game was massive,
it was
right?
huge. Yeah,
Like
and they
you
brought
win that, you're
they
going.
they played really well in most of those games. Like they had a few. They had like two bad halves in that stretch. They had that second half of BYU, and even that second half that was weird. First half of
Yeah.
Texas, maybe you say the second half of Kansas State, but like they were just really like when they hit their peak, they looked so impressive. And it sucks that Tyson got injured because we would still be playing. We would be still be playing against Ohio State if Tyson was on the field, and like
I don't that makes it even more impressive to be honest.
yeah, that's fair.
When Tyson got hurt, we were like, what is this team going to look like? And they responded by blowing out Iowa
I
State
know.
and taking a blue blood college football program as a 12-point underdog to double overtime
Brink.
in a game that they should have won. They
Yeah,
had 12-point a team favored by 12 points, a blue blood
14.
college football team,
Yeah.
14 on 4th and 13. They had them at 4th and 13 in double overtime. That's how
Oh,
close they were. And, I
the
mean,
one thing that like
it's
I do have a pretty like positive like prideful feeling leaving that game for ASU. The one thing is like we're not gonna have a Scatterboo again, you know,
yeah.
like
There's only one of those.
and we might have a better like offense next year in terms of like total, maybe Levitt becomes his own version of Scatterboo, but like he's just such a great player, and it's like, man, I wish we could have won that game just for him. I wish, but I mean, at least we have the conference championship. Like
Yeah,
that is
he
so.
is one of one though. That's a
Oh yeah,
great
oh
way to
my
put it
god,
because
yeah,
like you could replicate other guys have rushed for the yards that he rushed for and caught the passes he caught, but it felt like every time the dude caught the ball or touched the ball or threw the ball, it changed the complexion of the game. And,
yep.
and I feel like that's so rare for one player to have an impact on a game like that, where
And he got them
there's
out of a ton of jams. And like earlier this year, when wasn't like Levitt needed, a really steady running back, he provided
he
that.
saved that catch against Utah, saved the
Yep.
season.
Yeah. Yeah.
He doesn't make that catch against Utah. We're not talking like everything. You can
They
trace
blow
it
that
back
second half against Mississippi State without Scatterboo, right? Like
a
it's
hundred
all
percent.
these things. So,
You can
um,
trace it back to so many different things, and
yeah.
it's just like, man, he's my all-time favorite Sun Devil based on the
Oh,
guys
I
that
mean,
I've seen play,
yeah,
and I
he
don't know
has.
how I don't know how somebody else is going to replace a dude like that, especially coming
No,
from where he came from, dude. I remember talking. We've done this podcast for what 2.5 years, probably
yeah.
coming up close
I
to
remember. Yes, I
three.
remember when we got him. Yeah.
I remember talking about this Sac State transfer coming in, and it's just crazy that this dude became what he became, a guy who should have been a Heisman finalist and did what he did in the Peach Bowl. But I
I
mean,
know.
shout out Scatabo. He'll never pay for another meal in this town again.
He doesn't drink, so yeah.
Oh, I
As
was
of
gonna say
on
drink, and
Twitter,
then I was like, oh
yeah,
yeah. How about a
another instance of
scata? How about a
low
scata
level.
burrito, or a scata burrito, or a lifted truck? Let's go with that.
The lifted truck. I'm gonna miss
Those
the
are my
Scatterboo
favorite
lifted truck
commercials.
commercials, man.
I love
Oh
those
my god.
commercials. Yeah,
That
made
I
me want
will
to get a
say this,
lifted
like
truck.
I'm glad Scatterboo came around in the NIL era because just any good like great college player should be able to cash in on their value at the
Yeah,
time. And not only like he came around like just in general, but also when ASU had its shit together in the NIL era, right? He didn't come
yeah,
around 2 years ago. He came around now when like ASU returning everyone, that's a sign of the strength of the collective. And maybe it's not like, it's not the biggest collective out there, but it's clearly good enough. And you also meld that with the culture, whatever the word culture means, but just the overall vibes of the program, and you're in a good spot, and you're not
For sure.
losing all these guys. And the spring portal could always happen, but when you see these posts of like I'm back, that to me feels like they signed agreements, with the collectives.
Right. Like they got some sort of money. It all feels like, you said it, like contract extensions. Like that's
Yeah,
what it kind of
yeah.
strikes me as.
But it's nice that like it's like Dillingham's gonna have to ask for money and all this, but like it's nice that it's not just completely like there's no plan. It's
Yeah.
like totally like scrounging for money. Like the progress that's been made in the last 2 years, year and a half, like even the past year, right? Like it's been so much. And I mean, we haven't talked about this, to get Dillingham signed to a new deal, right?
Yeah.
Like that came out the
Yeah.
day before the game.
5
Just to have,
years.
yeah, and with like there's options on top of it too. So like we're
Dude,
just
I
in a
saw
good spot.
somebody
We're just in a
I
good
saw
spot.
somebody I saw somebody throw Dillingham's name out as somebody
Why?
the
For the
Jaguars
Jags.
should look
Yeah,
at.
it was one of those Fox Sports shows.
That yeah, that is just it's so absurd.
I
It's crazy. Where they're at right now
I
is
don't even know how
crazy.
to feel about that, because like it would suck if he went to the Jags, but also it would also be like
He would never leave ASU after that season. He just
no.
signed that,
No, 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 no,
like
no. Yeah, I mean, I don't worry about him. Like if he does
I
leave,
just laugh at the meteoric rise. Like
yeah. No, for sure.
hiring the youngest coach in college football, and now somebody who's already floating his name as
For
somebody an
the
NFL team
Jaguars.
should
Yeah.
look at. It's just insane. I think for the sake of still having him around the team, I think Scatterbo needs to be a Cardinal. I know
Just
you wouldn't like seeing him twice a
dude, I don't
year,
want
but
that, man. No, give him to the AFC. I don't want the Seahawks having to deal with Scatterboo, man.
he
I don't
he
think
has to he has to be a Cardinal because having that dude around ASU and continuing to pop in and continuing to talk because he would be
oh, he
around that
totally would.
program all the
And
time.
you know what else I love is like Scatterboo is like he loves ASU,
Yeah,
and
he said
like
it changed his life. And
it's
you know what, Scat, you changed ours, my friend.
yeah. I mean, honestly, like a little bit. Like it is not. He improved my life. Like
He
like
changed
it's
it
nice.
forever.
Changed it a little bit.
I'm a different man now.
Yeah, no, but yeah, no, he's left a great legacy with
Yeah,
ASU.
for sure.
It's like it's him and like all the guys who like have made the Hall of Fame from ASU. Terrell Suggs, who's on that path, and then like Jake Plummer and Tillman. Like and really
Yeah.
like in the modern era, it's like in terms of just best players. It's I've heard of this. This isn't like an original thought from me, but it's like Plummer, Suggs, and Scatterboo.
He's got to be after what happened this year. I don't know how he doesn't have a place on the Mount Rushmore.
Oh, he's on the yeah.
Like,
It's not even well. The final stats after the game, he was 1,500 and 500 prior to that game, with 19 total touchdowns. Or yeah,
yeah,
19 touchdowns. He rushes for 2 more touchdowns, 21, breaks the ASU single season record, has 1711 yards, which I believe is the single season record for rushing, and then like 600 receiving yards. So it's
yeah.
like
I think you're probably looking at Tillman, Plummer, Suggs, and Scatterbo on that.
Tillman occupies kind of a different area, because like as
But
solely a
are you
player,
not going to put him on the Mount Rushmore?
I think you could
You
argue, dude.
gotta.
There are other guys you could argue for, like, um, I don't know, I can't think of this now. Like, I mean,
The dude has a
N'Keal Harry, I
statue.
could argue him pretty high. Like, I know that he wasn't
Mm.
great in the NFL, but like, he was a beast in college, right? Like, he was an absolute beast. So
He
like we
didn't
could,
throw a touchdown in the Peach Bowl though.
he didn't, he could have probably, but. I don't know. I'm not gonna. I mean, like Tillman is a perfectly fine fourth, but it's
You
like it's
think?
clear that Scatterboo is on that list. Like he's just that good. So.
Yeah, I guess Tillman's a perfectly fine fourth, Mark.
You know what I mean?
Oh man,
You know what I mean?
nothing. Mark runs a tight ship around here.
Hey, I'm just,
Oh
I
man,
just, I don't know. But
No,
anyway,
you're the ultimate contrarian. That's what you are.
I don't think
You
I
like
am.
to. I don't know, Mark.
I don't
You
know.
no, it's not a negative thing. You just like to see the full snapshot before
The
you make
scope.
a decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, the full scope. That's a good way of putting it.
Well,
Maybe contrarian isn't right, but you are definitely a full picture type of guy.
of course. Yeah.
Whereas I am
Well,
a knee jerk, best Sun Devil of all time. Gonna tell
dude,
you,
I don't think it's crazy to call him the best Sun Devil of all. Oh, geez, it's best Sun Devil of all time.
yeah,
I don't think that's crazy at all. Like
an argument could certainly be made, Mark.
a strong argument. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else before we wrap up? I think we got a lot out of this. Now we
Yeah,
have
this
to.
was
Now
this
it's
was
fully on to
therapeutic.
basketball.
This was the medicine I didn't even know I needed was being able to scream about what those officials did to me. So,
Yeah. Now we're in the home. Now we're really in basketball season. So.
oh yay.
Yeah, that's what kind of sucks. Like I like watching this basketball team. I mean, Quains is awesome, but now it's like now
Quaintance is a stud. I like the pieces
that's
they've
just
added.
yeah.
Just make them work. Like I want to see an actual
Yes.
offense.
Yes.
Make them work.
All right. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. Follow the College Huddle podcast network. Great stuff in there. And as always, go Sun Devils, baby.